All right, welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're getting into something, well, it might seem kind of granular at first glance, but trust me, it's a big deal when it comes to how safe and how good the quality of your medications and supplements are. So yeah, today we're doing a deep dive into cleaning validation in the world of pharmaceuticals and dietary supplements.
Yeah, you got it. Think of it this way. This deep dive is like your express ticket
Yeah.
to understanding this super important process that, well, it really does protect the things you take, to stay healthy.
Cleaning validation, I mean, it's not exactly the most exciting topic. You're not going to see it on the front page news, but it is, like you said, it is fundamental. And basically, it boils down to this, proving without a doubt that manufacturers can completely eliminate anything that's not supposed to be there. Leftover stuff from the last product, the cleaning products themselves, even those microscopic bugs, all of it. Gotta go.
Yeah, absolutely. All of it out of the equipment. And what that means is when they make a new batch of a product, it's exactly what it's supposed to be. No surprises, no contamination, pure and simple.
And that's what it's all about, right? It's not just about keeping things tidy. We're talking about product integrity, meeting those strict regulations, and making sure everything is safe. And to get a real handle on this, we've been looking at some pretty important stuff. Like we've got the GMP, good manufacturing practice guidelines straight from the Code of Federal Regulations, specifically parts 110, 111, and 211.
Right, the GMP.
Yeah.
It's the Bible for this industry.
And we've also got our hands on industry best practice guides. Those go even deeper into the whole pharmaceutical quality thing. Plus, we're even looking at how they design these manufacturing facilities.
That's a good point, yeah. The design of the facility, it really does matter, and it shows that cleaning validation isn't just some isolated thing. I mean, it's woven into every single step of making these products. And, for you listening out there, our mission today is to break down how manufacturers prove their cleaning processes are actually working.
Exactly. We want to explore how they define what clean actually means in this context, because it's way more than just a quick rinse,
Oh,
right?
yeah, way more.
And we want to explain why all of this meticulousness is crucial to prevent any harm and ensure that what you're taking is safe and does what it's supposed to do.
Absolutely. It's all about safety and efficacy. That's the name of the game.
So let's get into it. Why is all this effort put into cleaning validation so critical? I mean, what's the worst that could happen if they don't get it right?
Well, the biggest thing we worry about is something called cross-contamination. And, it's not good. Let me give you an example. Imagine they make a super potent hormone in a facility,
Yeah.
right? And then let's say they don't clean the equipment properly and they use the same equipment to make, I don't know, a simple vitamin supplement. Well, even tiny, tiny amounts of that hormone could end up in the vitamin.
Wow, that doesn't sound good.
No, not good at all. And that could lead to some pretty serious health issues for anyone taking that vitamin. And it's especially risky with super sensitive stuff like biologics or even those powerful cytotoxic drugs they use for cancer treatment. I mean, those are really potent.
Yeah, it really drives home the point about potential dangers. So it's not just about the main ingredients getting mixed up.
No, no, it's more than that. I mean, think about it. Our sources, they highlight that products that are injected, or maybe they go on an open wound, or if you take them in large doses, or maybe for a really long time, those are even riskier.
Yeah.
Even something that seems like it's inactive, an inactive ingredient, could cause problems if it's got some residue from a previous product that was, really powerful.
Yeah, you really don't want that. So are there actual rules in place to prevent this kind of thing from happening?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. The GMP, those regulations we were talking about, specifically in 21 CFR parts 111.415A, that's for dietary supplements, and 211.130A for drug products, those regulations, they require manufacturers to have very specific procedures in place to prevent contamination and mix-ups.
Right, the GMP.
And thorough cleaning. I mean, that's the foundation for how they meet those requirements during the whole process, from manufacturing to processing to packaging, even storing the finished product. So cleaning validation is like their way of proving they're following the GMP to the letter.
So it's like a direct line from cleaning validation to meeting those core GMP requirements.
Exactly, a direct line. And, effective cleaning, it helps maintain those key GMP principles, making sure the identity, strength, quality, and purity of the product that comes out of that equipment is exactly right. Nothing's compromising the integrity of that final product that you're going to take.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. And what about the cleaning stuff itself? You've got to make sure those are safe too, right? I mean, you wouldn't want to clean something and leave behind a residue from the cleaning product itself.
Oh, yeah, that's a great point. And the regulations, they actually address that specifically.
Yeah.
21 CFR parts 110.13B1
Yeah.
and 111.15B6, they're very clear about that. Cleaning compounds, sanitizing agents, all that, they've got to be free of any harmful microorganisms, and they've got to be safe for their intended use. You don't want to solve one contamination problem by creating another one.
Right, yeah, that would defeat the whole purpose. Okay, so we've established that preventing cross-contamination is the main reason behind cleaning validation. But how do manufacturers actually decide what clean means? I mean, it can't be just eyeballing it, right?
No, definitely not just eyeballing it. It's got to be a lot more scientific than that. They have to set very specific, predetermined, scientifically sound acceptance criteria for all their cleaning procedures.
Acceptance criteria. Okay, so what are those exactly?
Well, think of them as the limits for how much residue, if any, can be left behind after they clean something.
So how do they decide what's an acceptable amount of residue and what's not?
Well, there are a bunch of factors they take into account. They look at how toxic the previous product was, how potent it was, how even a tiny amount could potentially be harmful. And then they look at whether they can even detect the residue,
Yeah.
you know? Do they have analytical methods that are sensitive enough to pick up those teeny tiny amounts?
So they have to have the right tools to actually measure it.
They do, they do. And then they also have to consider if the residue can break down into something else over time, something that might also be harmful. So it's all about assessing the risk.
So it sounds like it's all about understanding the potential dangers and then having the right tools to make sure those dangers have been completely eliminated.
You got it. It's risk assessment and verification. And once they've set these acceptance criteria, they have to be able to measure against them accurately.
Yeah.
That's where those validated analytical test methods come in. They have to make sure that the methods they're using are accurate, precise, specific, rugged, and robust. It's like using a measuring tool that you know is going to give you the right measurement every time.
It's like they have to calibrate the instruments right, make sure they're accurate.
Exactly. They're calibrating their tests.
Yeah.
They have to be absolutely sure those tests are giving them a reliable reading on whether the equipment is truly clean or not.
So where do they get these reliable test methods? Do they just, come up with them themselves?
Well, luckily, there are some well-established resources they can turn to. There are organizations like the USP, that's the United States Pharmacopoeia, and AOAC International, and they publish a whole bunch of analytical methods that are commonly used in pharmaceutical and dietary supplement manufacturing. These methods are considered the gold standard, scientifically sound and validated. Manufacturers can take those methods and adapt them to their specific needs.
Okay, so they've defined what clean means, and they have reliable ways to measure it. But how do they make sure their cleaning process can actually achieve that level of cleanliness consistently? Especially when things might not go perfectly. There might be some hiccups along the way.
Right, right. That's where the concept of worst-case scenarios comes in. When they design and validate a cleaning procedure, they have to think about the most difficult situations that could possibly come up. It's like they try to break their own system. They want to make sure it can handle anything.
So what are some examples of these worst-case scenarios?
Well, it could be something like a product that's super sticky or that clings to the equipment really hard, making it really difficult to remove completely.
Oh, I can imagine that. Like dried-on cheese in a pan. That's always a pain to clean.
Yeah, exactly like that. Or it could be the longest possible time that might pass between finishing one batch and starting the cleaning process.
The longer that residue sits there, the harder it is to clean. It's kind of like if you leave dirty dishes in the sink overnight, they're way harder to clean in the morning, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Okay, so what else could be considered a worst-case scenario? Well, they also think about using the lowest concentration of cleaning agent or the shortest cleaning time possible, just to really test the limits. And they have to consider the parts of the equipment that are the hardest to reach and clean, like nooks and crannies and things like that. By focusing on these tough situations during validation, they're basically proving that their cleaning process can handle even the less than ideal situations.
So they're not just assuming everything's going to go perfectly all the time.
Exactly. They're planning for the unexpected. And the logic is, if it can work under the worst possible conditions, it's much more likely to work consistently in everyday situations.
Makes sense. So they've defined clean, they've identified these worst-case scenarios, and they've got their cleaning procedures ready. But how do they actually prove that the process works? What does the validation process actually involve?
Okay, so the cleaning validation process, it usually has a few key steps.
Yeah.
First things first, they have to have a super detailed written cleaning procedure. This isn't just a good idea, it's actually required by the regulations, 21 CFR Part 211.67C3. This procedure has to spell out exactly how the equipment is cleaned, step by step, like a really thorough instruction manual.
So no room for interpretation. It's got to be clear and specific.
Exactly. And then, once they follow that procedure, they have to take samples from the equipment surfaces to see if there's any residue left behind. Usually they do this by swabbing certain areas or rinsing equipment with a solvent and testing that solution.
So they're actually collecting physical evidence.
Yep, physical evidence. And then, those samples are sent to the lab for analysis. Using those validated analytical methods we talked about earlier, these tests can actually measure how much residue is left behind, if any. And then they compare the results to those acceptance criteria, that definition of clean that they established earlier. If the results show that the residue is below the acceptable limit, then boom, that's proof that the cleaning procedure works for that particular situation.
It all comes down to having the evidence, right? Proving that it works.
Evidence is everything. And that's why documentation is so important in this whole process. They have to keep meticulous records of everything to prove that it was done correctly and to show what the results were.
So it's not just doing it, it's proving that you did it.
Right. The whole validation process has to be documented in a very specific way, in what's called a protocol. This protocol is like the master plan. It outlines every single detail. What they're trying to achieve, what equipment and products are involved, the step-by-step cleaning procedures, the sampling methods, the tests they used, the acceptance criteria, and who's responsible for each part of the process.
Okay, so how many times do they have to go through this whole validation process to be sure that their cleaning is actually validated? Is it a one-time thing?
Well, our sources, they don't specify an exact number of times, but the general idea is that they have to do it enough times to be really confident that the cleaning procedure works reliably. It's not just about getting it right once in perfect conditions.
Yeah.
They have to show that it works consistently, even under those worst-case scenarios we talked about.
So it's not just a one-and-done kind of thing. What happens after they've done the initial validation and everything looks good? Can they just relax and assume it's always going to be fine?
That's a great question, and the answer is no. They can't just assume it'll always be fine. They can't just check the box and move on. Cleaning validation is an ongoing thing, and our sources, they really emphasize this. Good documentation and periodic revalidation are absolutely essential. Those detailed records from the validation process, those are proof that they're complying with the GMP regulations, and they have to keep those records for a specific amount of time. It's like that old saying in GMP, if it wasn't documented, it wasn't done. That applies here big time.
So when would they have to go back and revalidate their cleaning procedures?
Oh, there are all sorts of things that can trigger revalidation. Like if they change the equipment, the cleaning products, the manufacturing process, even if they change the product they're making on that equipment, any of those things could mean they need to revalidate, either partially or completely. The goal is to make sure that the cleaning procedures are still effective even after they've made changes. And this is where the whole GMP concept of change control comes in. If you change anything that could affect product quality, you've got to carefully evaluate it.
So it's like a constant cycle of evaluating and checking and making sure everything's still working as it should.
Exactly. It's a cycle. They have to have really robust systems in place to monitor their cleaning processes and make sure they're still effective over time. This could involve things like regularly reviewing cleaning data, looking for any trends or weird results, and periodically confirming that the initial validation is still valid under the current conditions.
You mentioned earlier that the design of the facility itself plays a role in all of this. So how does the actual building and the equipment inside relate to cleaning validation?
Well, the design of the facility and the specific characteristics of the equipment can make cleaning easier or harder,
Yeah.
Like the basic principles of GMP, they suggest that equipment should be designed so that it's easy to clean and sanitize. Smooth surfaces, materials that don't react with the products, things like that. Even little details matter, like making sure there aren't any hidden spaces where residue could build up. And then, even the air supply in the manufacturing areas, the air that comes into contact with the product that often gets filtered through HEPA filters to keep the environment clean and minimize contamination right from the start. So it's all connected. The facility design, the equipment, the cleaning process, and the validation, it all works together.
So it's like a big interconnected system where every part matters. The design, the cleaning methods, the validation process, the ongoing monitoring. It all has to work together to ensure the safety and quality of the products.
Yeah, exactly. It's a holistic approach, a system designed to protect product quality and, in the end, to protect the people who are going to take those products.
So, to sum it all up, cleaning validation is this super critical, strictly regulated process in the pharmaceutical and dietary supplement industry. It's essential to prevent contamination, especially when you're dealing with powerful substances. Manufacturers have to define what clean means in a scientific way and then prove that they can achieve that level of cleanliness consistently, even under the worst possible conditions. And all of this has to be documented in detail, and it has to be revalidated periodically to make sure everything is still working as it should.
And for everyone listening, understanding these basic principles, it gives you a glimpse into just how much care and attention to detail goes into making those medications and supplements that you rely on. It shows you why even something as seemingly simple as cleaning is subject to such strict controls. It's all about protecting your health and well-being.
It really makes you think about all the complexity that goes into every pill or capsule you take, right?
Yeah.
And cleaning validation, that's just one piece of the puzzle, although a very important one. So what other seemingly ordinary things might actually be super critical in the manufacturing process? It's something to think about. And maybe this deep dive has sparked your curiosity to learn more about GMP regulations and the whole world of pharmaceutical quality. There's a ton of information out there that directly affects your health and safety, so keep learning. And thanks for joining us for this deep dive into cleaning validation.
Thanks for listening.
We'll see you next time.